All right, we're here with the We Love Open Source Studio. I'm here with Chris, and I'm Barton George with the All Things Open team. Chris, how are you doing today?
I'm good. A bit knackered, a bit jet-lagged, but other than that, I'm good.
Knackered, I can obviously tell you're British. Joking. Okay, so we're going to talk about open web, open tech, open source. So maybe we could start with what's the difference between those three?
I think they're kind of intermingling to a degree. I mean, open web to me, of course, like open web technologies, W3C standards, and publishing in a certain open manner as well, with like a Creative Commons license, things like that, and basically publishing with web technology, which was my career from the very beginning. I loved that. I worked at a radio station, and I hated that I actually had to only access a certain amount of people. And with the internet, you can reach people everywhere with the open web using open web technologies. Mm-hmm. And we've been fighting for that for a long, long time. At times we had like Flash, and we had Silverlight, and we had things taking over and always wanting to replace those open standards. And we managed to repel that attack over and over again. And I think we're now in a world where it becomes dangerous again. I think search engines giving me AI overviews without citing the source is the opposite of the open web. It's just like the truth according to one company.
Right.
So that's a worry that I have right now. Open tech is to me like an umbrella term for technology. Like that could be hardware, that could be software, or that could be also publication. Mm-hmm. So to me, the open tech is everything else, and it means only that it is open to contribution or open to using it for free or accessing it for free. And open source, it means that you publish something, a piece of software, but you also publish the source code for people to look at. You give full insight into what you do, and you allow for contributions to the outside. A lot of people have been doing open source, companies have been doing open source without actually doing the contribution bit. And that was always a worry to me. I worked at Microsoft, I worked on the Edge browser, and that's part of the Chromium project. And at one time, we were allowed to actually put code into the project as well. But then Google said, we're only the only ones that can put the code in. We can review your code, but you cannot just push it. It has to go to a vetting process by another company. And that to me is an antithesis of open source. It's like, it should not be one person saying like, okay, you can't do this, you can't contribute. The idea of open source, and to me, openness is that what I do, I give out to the world. And if something happens to me, it can live on. And if somebody else comes up with a new idea or a new feature that I hadn't thought of, I should make it as easy as possible for them to do that. A great success story is Visual Studio Code, for example. The story of that one is they created one good text editor. And then they made a great extension library around it that allows people to write extensions for different environments, different languages. And that's why it became such a successful product. Mm-hmm. Not because it tried to do all the things, but just did one thing well and then allowed for contributions from the outside. And that to me is what open source is about.
Cool. So since we're talking about open source, a couple of follow-up questions, and you can choose one or the other, because I could actually talk with you all day. This is pretty cool stuff. But either you want to talk about trends affecting open source today, or focusing on open tech. How do you keep tech open?
I think the tech open thing is the one that I want to take, because that's the keynote I'm going to give tomorrow as well. Because we are in a world right now where we're running into the danger of being dependent on a few companies and a few players again. Mm-hmm. We talk about AI-assisted coding, which is great, but at the same time, to me, it feels like a subscription in disguise. Like when you cannot program any longer without the AI assistant helping you, you're becoming dependent on that company that runs that AI bot. The same way when a browser now says it does agentic browsing for you and automatically goes through the web and does searches for you, pays things for you, buys things for you. This sounds really convenient, but to me it also sounds like a wet dream of somebody writing malware. That's exactly what I wanted to do with malicious extensions in the past. So we are actually giving away, and once again, that has been done before, we're giving away openness for convenience. Mm-hmm. And the first step of this was the app stores. I gave a TEDx talk back then when the App Store came out and said, like, it's the biggest step backward in software distribution. Mm-hmm. Because back in the days, I could buy a software as a CD or a DVD or a floppy disk, and when it broke, I had to buy it again. The distributor or the maker of the software could take it away from me. With software in the open web, basically it was impossible to do. As soon as it's out there, it stayed out there, and it got multiplied, it got archived, it got sent out there. Now we're going back into a world where companies can flip the switch and say like, well, you're not rich enough, you're not allowed to use that feature. And that to me is the antithesis of what we're doing here. For me, development, especially open source development, was always independent of location, independent of wealth, independent of ability. Mm-hmm. A great example is JAWS. JAWS is a screen reader that blind people and people with other disabilities use to access the internet. And it's been stalling in terms of features and support of the newer web. So two blind developers from Australia built their own screen reader, and that actually NVDA, and that one became now the new standard of that. And I love that anybody independent of ability can write software and publish it. And once we had these app stores, then companies could say well, you can't publish that here unless you do that. And that to me is no, a massive step back. I want to be able to publish things and let it live on and people do things with it. I don't think there's any convenience in app stores. They don't scale. They're really hard to maintain. But everybody sees them as the new thing. And now, yesterday, OpenAI announced that ChatGPT will now have apps inside it.
I was just going to say at the developer conference. So they're all heading this direction. So you already talked about my next question, which was how AI is altering the dev experience. And then the other thing is everything is AI. It's AI. What was the question, right? So if you were to look at a technology besides AI that you think we shouldn't forget about and we should be focusing on and looking to keep on developing, which would it be? You've talked on a bunch of different concepts in technology, but which one would you pick out as the main one that we should still focus on and not ignore?
I think in general, connectivity and especially open connectivity and being able to identify myself online is something that we kind of lost away. We log in with Google, we log in with Twitter, we log in with this and that, rather than having a decentralized identity platform. I talked to Kamara on my podcast last week. That's basically a foundation that is of different telcos, and they now have a system that just can use your telephone number as your identity without a second factor, because the second factor is built into your mobile phone. Or you go to a cache point with your mobile phone and the Bluetooth connectivity or NFC will be the two-factor authentication. So that thing I think is really interesting. How do we keep digital identity open and safe? And that's of course where things like blockchain come in as well. That became a joke after a while. We all had tech bros that with bitcoins and stuff, but that technology is still very interesting. And when you see Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the web, with his HTML, with his Web3 proposals or whatever it was, and then Block did something similar as well. I think there's lots of good stuff in the blockchain space that is not just about making Bitcoin money. And I think that's a space we shouldn't forget about.
Yeah. Well, I think, there's a lot of follow-up questions but that I would ask, but this has been very cool. So if you had one tip or piece of advice with regards to career or just anything that you would tell people, either just getting into the space or someone who's been around that may not have known it, what would that one be? And then we have something fun for you that I didn't tell you about right after this.
I think the main thing about it is don't fall for the siren song of AI doing everything for you. Learning the fundamentals, learning how programming means, and that programming means not writing lines of code, but solving problems, is something that everybody should be getting on about. I mean, we had this live coding competition at our event, and I did all the challenges for that, and they were independent of programming language. So I always had to come up with physics problems or things like that are independent of the programming language. And it was amazing how many GitHub stars and very, very well-paid developers forgot about the basics of trigonometry or learning anything about looping. It's just, don't get too excited about the platform, but I've never, except for standards, except for HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, I never bothered to actually look into frameworks too much because I know they were fleeting. And for you to have a career in the future, it's not only about your coding skill, but also your social skills. So if you want to get ahead in a company, you really have to get to know how to sell yourself to the company, how to be visible, but also how to be helpful. And I think that's one thing. The better you are in the social space, the more likely you are getting promoted later on as well. The Cinderella story of the cool coder that's basically an antisocial person is not a thing that you should be striving for.
Right. It's an archetype, but also a fallacy at the same time. So now we get to the part of the program called the Hot Fix Minute. And so I'm going to ask you 7 questions. It's first thing that comes into your mind. I'm going to give you a couple of few potential answers, and you tell me which one's the right one for you. Okay, number 1, Linux, Mac, or Windows?
Mac.
Okay, interesting. I thought you were going to go with Linux. Books, movies, or podcasts?
Books.
Wow, look at him go. Pizza, salad, or tacos?
Pizza.
Okay. Rock, country, or hip hop?
Rock. Punk.
Punk. Okay,
Ska.
there you go. Yes, we should have that on here too. Okay, Star Wars, Star Trek, or stargazing?
Star Trek, of course.
Okay, but of course. Which one?
TNG.
Okay.
And DS9. DS9 is super clever. Everybody watch DS9 right now. The politics in that one are super modern.
I would say the original, but that's okay. This is about you. Android or iPhone?
Android.
Okay, and last but not least, ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini?
Copilot.
Well, so there you go. At least you didn't say Perplexity. Okay, I lied. There's one more. The future of AI. Society will benefit, or I'd rather not say the chatbots may be listening.
Society will benefit because society will fight back.
I love it. Chris, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.